go.
Say cheese.
Cheese.
Okay, picture taken. In this day of MySpace and Facebook, it seems like everyone's a photographer. But what sets apart a good photograph from a photograph that everyone and their mom can take? In a poll that I took, a good photograph elicits emotion and evokes thought. How do you go about getting these reactions? The three objects of lighting, composition, and perspective all play a huge role in determining how interesting a photograph can be. Lighting can make or break a photograph. If it's too dark, it's like waking up in the middle of the night in a place that you're not familiar with and trying to find the bathroom. You're bound to stumble around and possibly stub a toe. If it's too much light, it's like your mom coming into your bedroom in the morning and pulling open the shades and all the bright sunlight pouring in. It's totally overwhelming. Both of these things you'd like to avoid. When you have too much light, you can have hard light, which is found in the middle of the day. It's when the sun's at its brightest point or when you're in a room where the lights are so bright and they don't have shades on them. Hard light tends to wash out colors and flatten your features. What you want when you're taking a photograph is soft light. Soft light can be found in the early morning hours or in the late afternoon and evening hours. Soft light is much more flattering. It creates soft shadows and doesn't wash out any features. Jenny Bidnett, author of Guide to SLR Photography, lists 4 angles of light, which is obviously the direction of which the light is coming from. When you have frontal light, it's when the light is coming onto your subject from the front, and that tends to flatten the features. When you have 45-degree light, which is most commonly used for portraiture photography, it gives you soft shadows, and it's much more flattering. When you have side lighting, the light source is set to either side of the subject, and it's much more dramatic. It creates deep shadows. And then you can also have backlighting, which comes from the behind the subject, and it creates more of a silhouette and doesn't show the features of the actual subject itself, such as in this photograph. You can see the outline of the tree, but you can't see the bark. Light is not the only important part of a photograph. The actual composition of the photograph is very important. You can't take a photograph of a wall, just plain wall, and expect it to be interesting. National Geographic's book, Ultimate Field Guide to Photography, lists a very important rule for making your subject interesting, and that's the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds basically states that if you were to place a grid on top of a photograph that consisted of 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines, the subject would fall at an intersection or along one of those lines. This draws the viewer's attention in a full circle of the photograph instead of right dead in the center. This photograph shows that. The bench and the land take up 1/3 of the photograph. You're drawn automatically down here, but then you also want to make your way up and around to view the rest of the photograph. Another way to catch the viewer's attention is by finding a pattern in a picture. You can find patterns in colors if you see the color in a woman's shirt and you also notice it in the flowers around her. Or by objects, such as having trees lined up in a photograph. Or, in this photo, all the lights going down. You can also take your photograph one step further by enhancing the perspective of your photograph. John Hedgecoe, author of John Hedgecoe's Guide to 35mm Photography, states that changing your angle or the level at which you take the photograph from dramatically increases the interestingness of your photo. Everybody takes a photograph like this. Well, not everybody, but most people take the photograph like this, at basic, straight-on level. That's the way everyone sees life. However, if you were to tilt the angle, all of a sudden, something changes. You can also go from above and take a photograph from a bird's eye view. Also, another angle or level at which you can take a photograph is down below. It's especially useful in child photography where you're not towering down above them, you're on their level. It's also useful in everyday objects. People normally looking at a fence wouldn't think it's very interesting. But when you go down to a different level, all of a sudden it almost becomes an optical illusion. People say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Hopefully with these tips, your next photograph can be worth 1,001.